All right, hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you guys out there with me on Facebook Live tonight. I am really pretty jacked about being here for several reasons. I have been working on some projects over the last couple of weeks that have had me quite hogtied, so to speak. So hopefully the lighting is good. I think it is. Who's out there? Tell us your name, where you're joining us from. And I've got a great Facebook Live presentation to share with you. I want to talk to you about courage and cowardice and the cause of courage. And I started just to call it the cause of courage, but then I realized that you can't do the cause of courage without talking about the cause of cowardice, because sometimes the cause is the same cause from an outside perspective, right? So I don't know if you remember me talking many months ago. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I talked on one of my, or probably several of my Wednesday morning Bible studies, that there are two different kinds of contributing factors. This was all the way back, probably back last year, October, November of last year, when I really talked about this a lot. But there are when it comes to determining factors, right? So when we think about determining factors, right? There are those who would have us to believe that all determining factors are created equally. But we know that all determining factors are not created equally, because we've got two different kinds, two very distinct types of factors, and those two distinct type of factors are, number one, external determining fact. We have two different kinds of factors. We have external factors and we have internal factors. Internal and internal factors are determining. These are determining. These are contributing. And so most people would have you to believe that all factors are created equally, that contributing factors are the same as determining factors, but they're not. Contributing factors all take place outside of you. Determining factors all take place inside of you. Now sometimes we will allow external contributing factors to cause us to create internal determining factors, and we'll think that they're both the same thing. We'll think this is the cause of the result. We'll think that the contributing factor is the cause of the result, but the contributing factor is never the cause of the result. The contributing factor is always contributing to the result, but the determining factor is the thing that's happening inside of us. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. Is that my cousin Kim Golden? What's up, Kimberly Ann? Good to see you, girl. So you need to come down to Florida and see us, right? So just saying, hashtag just saying. All right, so, and especially when it gets cold up there in Minnesota, don't you know? So I want to share with you a story that I know you're familiar with, but I promise you, we're going to look at some things that you're not familiar with in this story that you are familiar with, right? And I know without fail, because I started a Facebook Live, somebody's going to start calling me on my Google Voice, right? My computer's going to start ringing and going crazy, so I just shut it down so that wouldn't happen. So I'm going to read a story for you from the Bible. Is that Brother Rob Golden? Man, my brother's on here. My cousin's on here. Man, I got family. This is a family affair tonight, boy. So I want to read this story to you because a lot of times people will tell you, well, I did this thing because that thing happened. Never the case. Never the case. I did this thing. The things that I do because of who I am. Now, the things that happen on the outside of me never make me do anything. The things that happen on the outside of me, the only thing they do is cause me to show who I really am. And I know if y'all picking up what I'm putting down, go ahead and give me some hearts. Okay, because I like hearts too, just as much as the next person. So I'm going to read this story to you that I know you're familiar with, but we're going to look at it in a little different light today probably than you've looked at it in the past. And I was driving down the road today thinking, why is it that some people like change the world and other people are changed by the world, right? And I believe that some people change the world because the internal factors going on inside of them, the determining factors going on inside of them, they cause those determining factors to shape the destiny of everything around them, right? Whereas people who don't change the world, people who are changed by the world, they allow all of the contributing factors going on around them to change what's going on inside of them. So, or actually what really happens, it doesn't really change, it just manifests it, right? So I just want to read you a story. I know you're familiar with the story, but I promise you, if you hang in there with me, you are going to learn something today that's going to help take your life to another level. So it says in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 1, it says, "Now the Philistines gathered together the armies of battle, and were gathered together at Succoth, which belonged to Judah, and pitched between Shucca and Azekah, and Ephesmindanim." Okay, so now you know I'm not that good at reading all these Hebrew names, right, in English, right? Okay, so it says, "And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, and there was a valley in between them." That's usually what's between two mountains, right? A valley, right? There was a valley in between them. And then it says, "And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, and he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass, and a greaves of brass upon his legs, and the target of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing his shield went before him." Now, a couple of things I want to bring to your attention about this story. Number one, it says that a champion, Goliath of Gath. Now, I want you to write down that word champion. I want you to write down, in fact, I'm going to write it up here. The word champion. So that was a very important word in this story that gets glossed over a lot, right? There was a champion. Now the champion, Goliath of Gath, that meant back in those times they would have a champion. Two nations would have a champion. Nation number one would have their champion. Nation number two would have their champion. These champions would come together in the place where they went to battle. They would collide. Whoever came out victorious, that nation was the winner. Whoever lost and died that day, that nation was the loser. So this was not just Goliath saying, "Okay, send me somebody to fight me." He was saying, let's go ahead and determine this war in one day with one battle, one victor, one victim, one person standing, one person falling, one person living, one person dying, and that's it. Battle over, game over. Now, so that's what the word champion means. When you read that story, you need to know what a champion is. A champion is going to be the determining is going to be the determining factor of the battle, of the entire war, right? Game over. Okay, so also I want you to notice that it said his spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron. Now, I did the conversion on that. You can go do it yourself. And by the way, I never want you to take my word for anything that I say. I really want you to go do your own research. Like I did some research on this to find out that when it says his spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron, that actually means his spearhead weighed, in today's weight, 16 pounds. I want you to think about that. A spearhead, this is not the whole spear, this is just the head of the spear, that is as heavy as the heaviest bowling ball. Now, if you can imagine getting hit, like somebody dropping a 16-pound bowling ball on your foot. Imagine getting hit in the head with a 16-pound bowling ball, or getting hit in the chest with a 16-pound bowling ball. That would like change your life. It would change your life to something that's no longer life, right? So, and imagine somebody being strong enough to throw this thing, and he hurls this thing, and it's got this weaver's beam that's led by this 16-pound spearhead. That thing hits you in the chest, brother. Your arms and legs and everything's going in many different directions, right? So Goliath was this fierce champion who had fought and won many battles. Okay, so you're with me. And then it says in verse numbers 8, it says, and he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, why are ye come to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye the servants of Saul? Choose a man for you to come down and to fight with me. If I am able to fight if he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then ye shall be our servants and serve us. Okay, I want you to notice the stakes of the battle. The stakes of the battle were the stakes of freedom. right? This is like big stakes. The stakes of the battle were the stakes of freedom. You lose, you're slaves. You win, you're free. I'm going to tell you something. That is so much like life. That is so much like your life and like my life. You win the battle in life, the financial battle anyway, you're free. You lose the financial battle, you're the slave to somebody who controls you. It's a whole other conversation for another day. But I want you to just pick up what the stakes were great. And it says, and the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And Saul and all Israel heard the words of the Philistine, and they were dismayed and greatly afraid. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. I want you to, that's really an amazing thing to say. They were dismayed. Where was I? I lost my place again. I defy the armies of the Philistine. They were dismayed. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. And that word dismayed means they fell down prostrate and they began to break down. They were confused. They were affright. They were beaten down. They were discouraged. They were dismayed. Let me ask you a question. What champion has challenged you to for total stakes of total freedom, like come out and fight me right now, or I'm gonna break you down, I'm gonna make you my slave, your life will never be the same? What thing is it? Is it an illness? Is it a financial reversal? Is it the loss of a job? Is it some other kind of attack that the enemy has sent you to cause you to become discouraged in your mind, defeated in your mind, so your body will follow suit? Is that is that where you find yourself today? Because if it is, I've got some encouraging words for you that I think will help you take your life to another level. Now, I'm going to start this series tonight. on this Facebook page. I'm going to do another part of the series tomorrow night and another part of the series on Tuesday night. I may end up going through Wednesday night as well. But I'm going to finish the series up in a Facebook group that I'm going to tell you guys about when I get done. So the champion is Goliath of Gath, right? Send me a man, he fights me. I've got a 16-pound spearhead, I want to explode him. We're fighting for freedom. The armies of Israel are dismayed. I really wish I could talk about that because, and the reason they were dismayed, I will say something about that. The reason they were dismayed is because they believed their eyes more than they believed their ears. Because faith is created in the ears. It's an ear, right? Faith is created in the ears. Doubt is created in the eyes. They saw the giant and they were afraid, right? They saw the giant and they were dismayed. They saw the giant, they fell down on their face discouraged. They saw the giant and they're dismayed. Well, why? Why were they dismayed? They were dismayed because they believed in what they saw more than what they heard. You say, "What, Myron, what did they hear?" I'm not going to tell you what they heard yet, but I am going to tell you what they heard. So I'm not going to tell you yet. I want to keep reading the story. It says in verse 12, "Now David, the son of the Ephrathite, Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, he had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse followed Saul to the battle, and the names of these 3 sons that went the names of the 3 sons that went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn. The next was Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. And David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem, Judah." Now, I want you to understand what's going on here. So David's the youngest of 8 brothers. His 3 oldest brothers are soldiers. He is a shepherd. He's out in the field taking care of father's sheep. He's learning how to be a shepherd. He's learning how to take over the family business. He's learning how to do work in the family business. And he is taking care of his father's sheep. It was a dirty job. It was a stinky job. It was a job that required extreme diligence. It was a job that required extreme courage, as you're going to find out in a little bit. It was a job that was thankless, and it was not something that would give you great accolades, and it was a job that he did when nobody was watching. David didn't have armies of people to see him watch the sheep. He didn't have multitudes of people to watch him watch the sheep. David watched the sheep not because of what was going on around him. David was diligent watching his father's sheep because of what was going on inside of you. The question that I have for you is, what do you have going on inside of you that will cause you to do what you're supposed to do, the way you're supposed to do it, when you're supposed to do it, and do it like that every time you do it, even though no one sees you but God? Good question, isn't it? Well, let's keep reading. So I'm going to skip a couple verses. Well, I don't want to skip a couple verses, and I hope y'all are going to be patient with me, because I'm not really going to get in a hurry on this. And if you get in a hurry, I get it. If you got to go, I get it. Come back and watch it later. It's going to be archived on here. But I want to share this with you because all of us are going to have things we have to face that are going to require courage in order for us to get through them. And if we don't learn to have some courage and we allow cowardice to take over, we will back down from every giant that faces us. We will back down from every giant that faces us, and we will never stand boldly in the face of our enemies. We will always find ourselves falling face down on the ground because we're afraid to face the giants that challenge us for our freedom. Okay, so, and it says in verse 15, but David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep in Bethlehem, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said to David, his son, take now therefore for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, these 10 loaves, and run to the camp and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took and went and as Jesse commanded him. And he came to the trench where the host was going forth to fight and shout for the battle. And Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army, and David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper and ran, I want you to notice that word, ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren. I want you to notice the vim and vigor and vitality with which David faced his challenges. He didn't walk into the battle. He didn't mosey into the battle. He didn't tiptoe into the battle. The scripture says he what? He ran into the battle. Thank you, Janice. I like your #9 on that, sis. Okay, so he ran into the battle, right? And the men of Israel, let me see, in army against army, and David left and ran and saluted his brethren. Verse 23, and he talked with them, and behold, there came up the champion. Now, when it says there came up the champion, we know who it's talking about, don't we? There came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistine, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and they were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man? I want you to notice what the question they asked. They asked, have you seen this man? Like, have you seen him? I'm going to tell you something. The scripture says we're supposed to walk by faith and not by sight. Here's what that's telling us. He's not patting us on the back saying, good for you, you walk by faith, not by sight. He is commanding us to walk by faith and not by sight. What he's saying is you can't believe your eyes because your eyes tell lies. Do you understand that things are seldom as they seem? And things are seldom as they appear to be? And seldom do things appear to be as they are. Okay, so here's what it says. It says in verse number 24, and the men of Israel saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen the man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich with great riches, and he will give his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. Now, I want you to notice what happened. Here's what the men said. Have you seen the man who is challenging Israel? Surely to defy Israel as he come up. And the king has said that the person who fights against this Philistine, here's what's going to happen. The king's going to enrich him with great riches. Number 2, he's going to give him his daughter to wife. Number 3, he's going to make his father's house free in Israel. That word free means he's going to have tax amnesty. So here's what he's going to get. The guy who kills this giant is going to get riches. He's going to get the king's daughter. He's going to get to be the king's son-in-law. And he's going to have tax amnesty. Okay? Now, you say, Myron, why do you emphasize that? You're going to see why I emphasize in a minute. And a lot of people, they kind of gloss over that. But I want you to notice what happened when they said this. And his father's house will be free in Israel. And verse 26, and David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Here's what he said. He said, okay, tell me again what I'm going to get when I kill this giant. Why? Because David knew that there's a difference between self-interest and selfishness. See, you can have self-interest without being selfish. Most people think that if you have self-interest, that automatically makes you selfish. If you've got self-interest, if you care about what you're going to get out of the deal, well, that automatically makes you a bad person. Somehow or another, the media and the government has gotten us to believe that the idea that I'm looking out for myself, I'm going to do something for myself, automatically makes me evil. So the fact that I want something for me, that's an ill motive. I don't think that's an ill motive at all. Obviously, it's not. David wanted to make sure that he knew exactly what he was going to get if he killed this Philistine. And I want you to notice that not only did David ask the question once, he said, and David said, what shall happen? David spake to the man, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, take away armies, take away reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies? The armies of who? The living God. Now, Goliath called the army of Saul. David called the armies of the living God. You're going to understand why here in a minute. Okay, and the people answered him after the former manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. In other words, when David said, what shall be done to the man that killeth him? They said, the man that kills him is going to get riches, the king's daughter, and tax amnesty. When they told him that, he said, what am I going to get? He said, riches, the king's daughter, and tax amnesty. David asked twice, and then what happens is his brothers hear it. The people answered him after the same manner. Verse 28, and Eliab, his eldest brother, went and spake unto the men, and Eliab, his eldest brother, went and heard the men that he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and said, why comest thou down hither? Now, one of the things that's really interesting, David came to the army to bring some food from their father to his brothers. So he came for them, to bring them something to eat and to see how they were doing. So, but David's brother said, so why are you here? And he said, his anger, verse 28, and Eliab, his eldest brother, heard the words he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, saying, why camest thou down hither? Why did you come down here? With whom hast thou left those few sheep in the valley? In other words, what he's saying is, he says, you're not even old enough. You're not even big enough. You're not even strong enough to be here. You're supposed to be down there tending those sheep, doing something insignificant. Why are you here? Now I've got to worry about you and worry about the battle. Why are you even here? And then he said, I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And here's what David said. David said, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? Whew. That's such a great question. That is such a great question. Two great questions. What have I now done? Like, what have I done wrong? I came down here to bring y'all some food. I hear this dude coming over here threatening us, like he don't know who we are, and he don't know whose we are. He said, and then the men come and tell me what's going to happen, and I just make sure I ask them what's going to happen to the man. Why? Well, and I want you to notice he asked that question once again, but after he said to his brother, he said, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? The next thing that happens, verse 30, it says, and he turned from talking to his oldest brother, by the way, which you would in that culture, you would not give your oldest brother any less respect than you would give your father, because the father of the house is the strength of the house, but the oldest son in the Hebrew culture is the head of the house. So when David's talking to Eliab, his oldest brother, and he says, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? He's rebuking his oldest brother. You just didn't do that, right? And then he turned from him. It's like, he's like, talk to the hand, right? And he turned from him, and I want you to notice what he asked in verse 30. He turned from him toward another and spake after the former manner. In other words, he said, tell me one more time what I'm going to get when I kill this giant. And they answered him again after the former manner. Why did David, they told him once and then he asked 2 more times. Why did he do that? Why did that happen? Here's why. Because the only legal right that he would have to the money, the girl, and the tax amnesty was if he heard it from the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Why? Because in the Hebrew culture, you could not establish truth with 1 witness. Truth had to be established with 2 or 3 witnesses. Funny, interesting thing, the word for truth, amet in Hebrew, is a word that has 3 letters in it. Each one of those letters stands on 2 legs. Why? At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. So, David said, is there not a cause? And yes, there was a cause. There was a cause for David to have courage, and there was something that caused David to have courage while everybody else had fear. So, while we're on the first part of this presentation, I want to ask you a question. And here's the question I want to ask you. What are you allowing to be your cause? External contributing factors? The things going on around you? How things look like they are? Are those the things that are those the things that are shaping the direction of your life, shaping the decisions in your life? Is it everything that you're looking at while all the things that are going on around you? And you may be this person standing right here, and the question is, are you happy or are you sad as you're surrounded by financial difficulty, right? You're surrounded by financial difficulty, and maybe you're surrounded by sickness, and maybe you're surrounded by attitude, right? And maybe you're surrounded by exhaustion. Maybe you're surrounded, who knows, whatever. Okay, so you're surrounded by these things, right? So, and you find yourself in these circumstances, right? You're in these circumstances, right? You find yourself in the circumstance of financial difficulty, sickness, attitude. Another one that David had, right? Ill motive. People assigning ill motive to him. They said, "Well, I know your pride and not in your heart." See, a couple chapters earlier, David had gotten anointed by the prophet Samuel, and Samuel had anointed him to be king of Israel in the presence of his brethren, in the presence of his father. And now his brother thinks he's just down there being prideful because he got anointed and they didn't, right? So people are going, when you start having courage, when you stand when everybody else is cowering, when you stand in the face of adversity, and you stand when other people are collapsing, people are always, hear what I say now, they will always assign ill motives to you. People will say, well, he's just doing that because, she's just doing that because she thinks she's all that in a bag of chips. He just thinks he's the man. He just thinks, they think they're all that. And people will assign ill motives to you. But I want you to understand something about circumstances. Circumstances is basically a compound word that comes from the word circle and the word stand. So your circumstances are the things that surround you while you're standing still. Isn't it interesting that they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop? See, circumstances are those things that surround you while you're standing still. All you have to do to remove yourself from your circumstances, or if you will, to remove your circumstances from you, is to take action and start moving, and no longer, when you start moving, your circumstances will make way for you. Why? Because circumstances can only surround you while you're standing still. Notice what David did. David ran into the battle. So the question I have for you is there not a cause? And the answer is, there's always a cause. Most people miss what is really the cause of their output. They miss what's really the cause of their life experience. They think the cause, well, that happened to me, that's why I'm this way. That happened to me, that's why I'm this way. This thing happened to me, that's why I'm this way. My life, I can't get ahead of my life because I don't have what other people have. I don't have people helping me like they have. I don't have a college degree like they have. I'm not as smart as they are. I'm not as sharp as they are. Well, I don't have money like they have. I was born on the wrong side of the tracks. And we blame, watch me now, we blame everything going on around us for our life. Because we're saying, that thing is a champion over me. That thing has already determined my fate. And we believe and buy the lie that contributing factors are determining factors, and contributing factors are never determining factors unless you resign to let them be. The reality is that determining factors all happen on the inside. When David said, is there not a cause? The reason David saw something different than everybody else saw is because David was focused on what was going on inside of him based on what he heard, and everybody else was focused on what was going on around them based on something they saw. And what you've got to learn to do is you've got to learn to trust the voice of God from his word more than you trust what your eyes are telling you. Because you can't believe your eyes because your eyes tell lies. You better hurry up and know that. Now, what was the cause? I'm going to give you a couple of causes of David's courage. Why did David have courage when everybody else had cowardice? Number one, David had courage, number one, because David had a different kind of character. What do you mean a different kind of character? David had the kind of character that was vigilant. I always get vigilant when nobody was watching. Let me ask you a question. How vigilant are you when nobody's watching? How hard do you study when nobody's watching? How hard do you work when what you work on seems like it's not working? See, here's what you have to understand. People make the mistake of thinking that something they are working on isn't working. For instance, I recently started a membership site, right? And I started it March 21st. And man, we were gangbusters out of the gate, right? We're about to be gangbusters out of the gate again. But we were gangbusters out of the gate. What happened? By April 25th, they threw us a curve. Stripe said, we're not processing your credit cards anymore. We don't like your business model, right? So now I've got to go find another merchant account. Well, I did. That wasn't the hard part. But I figured because I was having problems with the affiliate software, I might as well fix that too. Well, man, I researched and looked. Somebody out there needs to create an affiliate software. I found one. It's great. It took us a while to get everything integrated over, but it's all integrated over. It's all moved over, right? But the fact is, it took a lot of work behind the scenes with nobody watching, nobody clapping. There weren't any Facebook Lives while we were working on that, changing that affiliate software. Nobody was cheering us on. I mean, probably inside you were like, oh, please hurry up and get this fixed, right? But that was something that had to be done in the booth in the back, in the corner in the dark when nobody's watching. Just like David and the sheep. I'm going to tell you something. What you are working on, when you're not getting celebrated for it, when you're not getting hand claps for it, when nobody's patting you on the back, when nobody's saying, go get him, Tiger, that stuff contributes to your life way more than the stuff that everybody's clapping for you, cheering for you, fans in the stands, and all the rest of that stuff. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. All of us like that. But the fact is, you got to have a different kind of character. I'm going to tell you something else. Number two. David remembered his covenant. I'm going to tell you something. This is the number one advantage that David took advantage of that caused him to have courage when everybody else was a coward. You say, man, coward's a strong word. I know. Coward means you cower. You shrink away from, right? You're cowering. You're shrinking away from. The thing that caused David was not courageous because he was big and strong like me. Okay, I thought you might enjoy that as much as I enjoyed saying it. Okay, so David did not fight Goliath because he had big muscles. David didn't fight Goliath because he had new technology and weapons. David was willing to fight Goliath because David remembered hearing about the covenant that God had made with Abraham, the father of the faith. And David remembered Genesis chapter 12, when God said, if you will come out of the land that and you'll go to the place I'm going to show you, I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to bless those that bless you. I'm going to curse those that curse you. And I'm going to make your name great. He remembered that God said that to Abraham. Now I'm going to tell you something. I know everybody has a lot of different political views and all that. That's fine. You're welcome to have whatever political views. I'm not even talking about political views right now. I'm talking about biblical views, right? I'm going to tell you something. I am glad that we are standing behind Israel again for the first time as a nation in a long time. I'm so thankful that we are standing with Israel, our primary ally, the only nation in Greater Africa, aka the Middle East, the only nation in that area that is a democracy. Everything else is a dictatorship, and we have been standing against the only nation that even remotely resembles us. We've not been standing with them for years, and now all of a sudden we are standing with them again. So I'm very thankful for that. Why? Because God promised to bless those that bless Israel and curse those that curse Israel. Thank God that America is standing with Israel again. That abolishes so many curses. I know a lot of people don't like that kind of talk. It doesn't really matter. I'm not running for office, so I don't have to be politically correct. I'm just telling you my biblical view, my biblical perspective, right? And we lost some folks on that, and that's okay too. Okay, so covenant. So I want you to understand this about the covenant. Here's what you have to understand about the covenant. A covenant always involved two individuals, right? Covenant always involved two individuals. Covenant always involved at least two animals. And I want you to understand that God said, I'm going to enter into a covenant with Abram. Go read Genesis chapter 15, verses 1 through 7. God enters a covenant with Abram. God tells Abram to bring a ram 3 years old, turtle dove, a pigeon, and a ram, a she-goat, and a heifer 3 years old. And he brings all these animals, and God says, kill the animals, and then God says, cut them in pieces, right? So he cuts these animals in pieces. Why? Because when two people got ready to, I'm going to show you how this works now. When two people got ready to enter into covenant, what they would do is they would stand back to back to each other. Like this would be the back, and this would be the front, this would be the back, this would be the front. They would both walk around, they would walk around these animals like this. He would walk around this animal like that. They would come back in the middle face to face instead of back to back. And they would make a promise. Okay? Here's the promise they would make. They would say, God would say, if God and Abram are entering into this covenant, God would say to Abram, he'd say, and Abraham would say to God, God would say, Abram, I'm going to give everything I have to bless you and yours. I'm going to give you my strength, I'm going to give my life, I'm going to give my energy, I'm going to give everything that I have, all the resources that I have to protect you and yours. And if I don't keep my promise to you, Abram, may what happened to this animal happen to me. See, the word covenant means to cut. That's why they would cut the animals in pieces. The word covenant means to cut, and a covenant is a promise. It's the opposite of a contract. A contract is an agreement between two individuals based upon a mutual distrust. So if I enter into a contract with somebody, it's because I don't trust them to keep their word. If they don't keep their word, I can take them to court and get what's mine. They can take me to court and get what's theirs. It's called a contract. Covenant doesn't work like that. A covenant is, I am vowing on my very life, my very existence, to give everything I have, all of my resources, all of my time, all of my wealth, all of my energy, and even my very life if necessary to protect you and yours. Abraham's saying to God, I'm going to give everything to you. My wealth, my strength, my abundance, my everything, I'm going to give it all to you, and if I don't, may what happened to this animal happen to me. That's what they're promising each other. But Abram had a problem. Here's the problem Abram had. Abram could not keep the covenant. And because he couldn't keep the covenant, God put Abram to sleep. God says, okay, Abram, I want you to go over here and go to sleep. Right? Abram's asleep. So it says, and it came to pass when the sun went down, it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace. Right? There's a smoking furnace. So we're going to call that, this is the fire, right? Smoking furnace. Smoke. Right? And then it says, and a burning lamp. Right? I'm going to make this a burning lamp. And a burning lamp passed between those pieces. So it says a smoking furnace and burning lamp. So Abram had to have a substitute walk the covenant in his place. The smoking furnace is a picture of God the Father, because the scripture says when God came down and spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, it says the smoke ascended like the smoke of a great furnace. In Hebrews chapter 6, it tells us our God is a consuming fire. Consuming fire, that's the fire of a furnace, right? But it also says a smoking furnace and a burning lamp. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. That word light is the word lamp. And the smoking furnace and the burning light is that God the Father, well, first of all, the burning lamp, which is a picture of Christ, it's an Old Testament type of Christ, is saying, if Abram doesn't keep the covenant, may what happened to this animal happen to me. Which is why in Isaiah it says, his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So Christ is saying, in Abram's place, if Abram doesn't keep the covenant, may what happen to that animal happen to me. That is a picture of, that's a prophecy of the crucifixion thousands of years before Jesus was ever born of a virgin, right? Then the smoking furnace, God is saying, if I don't keep my promise to Abram, may what happened to these animals happen to me. So God is saying, if I don't bless those that bless Abram and curse those that curse Abram and make his family great, if I don't do that, may what happened to this animal happen to me. So God swore by his own existence to bless Abraham and Abraham's seed, and to bless those that bless Abraham and Abraham's seed, and to curse those that curse Abraham and Abraham's seed. That's why David, when he heard the Philistines speak, he said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Why did he say that? Here's why he said that. He said that because the circumcision was the reciprocation of the covenant on the behalf of Abraham in Genesis chapter 17. That's when he reciprocated the covenant. So here's what David was really saying. Who is this Philistine that is not even in covenant with my God, that he should defy the armies of the living God? See, as Goliath is breathing out threatenings and cursing David and the armies of Israel, David's getting excited because he knows that David said, I can't lose with the stuff I use. And he knew that Goliath couldn't win. So David's courage was based on a covenant that he had heard about from the time he was knee-high to a grasshopper. He had heard the story about how God knocked down the walls of Jericho. He heard the stories about how, by the way, his great-grandmother was Rahab, the harlot. That was it was either his grandmother or his great-grandmother. I don't remember which one. I'd have to go study it. But that's David's great-grandmother. You don't think she told him about how God knocked down the walls of Jericho and saved her and her family alive? I'm going to tell you something. This is when you begin to understand who you are based on whose you are, and the fact that God made a covenant with Abram and Abram's seed. And here's what the scripture tells us in Galatians chapter 2, that we are the seed of Abraham by faith in Christ Jesus. When you understand that God has sworn by his own existence to bless those that bless me and curse those that curse me, when I hear a giant cursing me, when I hear a challenger threatening to be a champion, saying, send him out to fight me, and if I win, he loses forever, and he's got to be I don't have anything to worry about. I can start looking at my chops. I can start polishing my stones. I can start getting my sling all ready to go. Why? Because I remember hearing the covenant regardless of what I'm seeing. I let the music of the covenant ring loudly in my ears regardless of how big the giant is that I see with my eyes. What is the cause of David's courage? I'll tell you what it is. The cause of David's courage is David's faith in the covenant. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is this: David's conditioning. David was no stranger, as you'll find out when we go further. David was no stranger to danger. David was no stranger to difficulty. David was no stranger to challenges and things that threatened him. Here's what he said. And you'll read this. We'll read this later on when we look at this again tomorrow night. By the way, tomorrow night I'm going to go on at 7 because I've got my 10 o'clock call. Tomorrow night I'm going to go at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Right? I just went on late tonight because I stopped to get me something to eat on my way home. So I want you to understand that David was no stranger to difficulty. Here's what he told King Saul, and we'll read it tomorrow. But he said that when I was keeping, you don't have to worry about me. When I was keeping my father's sheep, a lion and a bear came and took one of my father's sheep. And I went after the lion and I grabbed him by his beard and smote him and slew him. You grabbed a lion by his beard? Dude, what were you thinking about? I was thinking about, that's my father's sheep. This is my family business. I've got a responsibility to fight it even in the presence of a lion, even in the presence of a bear. It's really interesting that that David went after a lion and went after a bear and conquered them so that his family business would survive and thrive. Here's what I want you to understand. I understand what it's like to go through something. I'm going to tell you something. Some people, they will never stick with anything long enough to be victorious because they believe everything they see and almost nothing that they have heard. And I'm going to tell you something. You don't get to make 6 figures. You don't get to make 7 figures. You don't get to change your family for generations by living a life of happenstance, by sticking your toe in the water, by trying it out, whatever it is. But find a path, a track for you to run on, and run on that track when it's hard, and run on that track when it's easy. Run on that track when it's uphill, run on that track when it's downhill. Run on that track when the money's flowing, run on that track when the bills are flowing. Run on that track when everybody's clapping for you, run on that track when everybody's accusing you of having ill motives. Regardless of what's going on in your life, do not cave to the challengers. Because here's one thing I found out a long time ago. There are no champions without challenges. The question you've got to answer for yourself and your family is this. Are you going to let your challenges make you a champion? Like David did, which we're going to find out later? Or are you going to let your challenges make you a chump? And your challenges don't really make you a chump. They just show that you're a chump. Because as soon as they show up, you're out of here. So I want to say, first of all, thank you for hanging out with me tonight on this brief Facebook Live. I didn't go terribly long, but I went long enough for you to go have something to think about. And the question I want you to think about tonight is, in business, I believe the Bible is more of a practical book than a magical book. Like a lot of people want to just, they want to have all these magical experiences and go to church and get all emotional, and then they come home and they look back to their reality, right? And they don't affect the experience of their life. They let all the experiences of their lives affect them. They let all the contributing factors move them and push them instead of allowing the determining factors inside of them cause them to push the circumstances, right? So the question you got to answer, like, are you going to be strong enough to last through something? I'm so glad that back in 1985, 1986, 1987, when I got started in home-based business, and it was hard. It didn't seem like it was working. Notice I didn't say it wasn't working. It didn't seem like it was working. Because even the stuff that doesn't seem like it's working is working. And I want you to understand that everything that you are working on is working on you. And the work that it is doing on you is more important than the work that you are doing on it. And so many people think, well, because I'm not getting this outcome that I desire, and I didn't become a millionaire by next Thursday, they think, well, this isn't working. Well, the thing that's really not working is you quitting everything you start. That's what's not working. You not lasting through a learning curve long enough to learn and develop some new skills. That's what's not working. You jumping ship as soon as the boat begins to spring a leak. And by the way, I'm not just talking about the VMC. I'm not just talking about the Virtual Millionaire Club. I'm just talking about anything in life. Yeah, the Virtual Millionaire Club, we ran into some snags, but we're past those snags now, folks. So I hope you're ready to run. I'm ready to run. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to go deep and fix the problem, period, once, done, forever. And we're going to have a lot of people whose lives are going to be changed dramatically because they're learning financial principles from a biblical perspective, and they're learning business principles from a biblical perspective. See, you probably didn't even know before tonight that the story of David and Goliath had anything to do with a family business, but it did. And I believe that business is God's designed vehicle for your family to have financial freedom. I believe that from a biblical perspective. God put the family business on the earth before he put the family in the family business. God put the Garden of Eden there, and then he put the man there to dress him to keep it. Adam and Eve, he put in the garden to dress them to keep it. He put the family in the business after he put the business on the earth. Why? Because that is God's design. Period. Now it's your turn. And by the way, the family business that you started doesn't have to be the VMC. It doesn't have to be something I started. But by the grace of God and for your family, start something, stay with something, do something to make your life work. Listen more to the internal determining factors than you do to the external contributing factors. And one of these days, you will stand with those of us who said, I'm so glad I did. And you won't lie down beside those who say, I really wished I had. I appreciate you joining me tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Peace out, my people.